left-wing political talk show. We go live every weekday at 11 a.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel. You can find it by searching for The Majority Report. We talk about the news, we take libertarian callers, we have debates, we interview guests on topics ranging from the post-Civil War Reconstruction era, child poverty, capitalism, the intellectual dark web, and more. And that's all just within the last month. If you want to hear what smart, progressive political talk that is occasionally amusing sounds like, then you need to tune in. And you're always welcome to call in if you want to hear the correct opinion on any given topic. I will give it to you. Tune into The Majority Report at 11 a.m. Central Time on YouTube or later wherever you get your podcasts.
WVNN. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. It is Saturday, June 19th, Juneteenth, 2021, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, June 20th, 2021, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama, and sometime next week on WHIV in New Orleans, Louisiana. NEA staff authorizes a strike. MSNBC union busts wokely. We're giving you the Southern updates from Jonah Furman's Who Gets the Bird newsletter. We're going to be taking your calls and more on today's show. So remember, folks, the North Alabama DSA has a necessities drive this Saturday and every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW Local 558 Union Hall on Clinton Avenue, right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805. So bring by your non-perishable food items, your PPE, clothes, blankets, all that good stuff, and your donations will all be forwarded to the Manna House. You can follow at DSA North Alabama on Twitter for more information. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments and release them throughout the week. We upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website where you can buy our hats and stickers, all union made, thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport. So good morning, everybody. We are coming to you without a guest today because there's so much news in the labor world, and this is a really good, and all the news really works in with our theme of trying to be consistent, have a good, justice-oriented labor movement, have a real critique of the boss and capital, and not fall for the woke pandering that that woke corporations and Raytheon's pride flags will try to shove down our throats. There's just so much kind of stuff in that vein this week. And so the first story that we're going to talk about is the National Education Association's their conflicts with their staff union, the National Staff Organization. And just to kind of set this up, the National Education Association is the largest union in the country. The largest union, the most members of any union in the country.
3 million members.
3 million members. And now, to be fair, that's not what they want to be. They don't want to be the largest union in the country. They want to be a professional organization.
Well, you could say there's something of an identity crisis sometimes within the NEA universe and particularly among some of their state affiliates.
Yes. So they want to be a professional organization. And you know what? That's how they're treating their staff, like a professional organization would. So, Adam, you have been a member of the National Staff Organization in the past. You didn't work for the NEA in D.C. You
Yes.
never worked in D.C. For the National Education Association, but you have worked for one of their state affiliates for years. And so, I'm sure people, some sisters and brothers at
Yes.
in the NEA. So what the hell is going on?
So, just to kind of set the stage a little bit further, this can be kind of confusing. It's very meta, but a lot of unions have their own staff unions inside of them, which makes sense, right? If you're a labor union, you're going to have employees who do organizing work, who do computer work, membership processing. There's all sorts of, day-to-day work that goes into operating a labor union. So they have employees. And in many cases, most cases, those employees are themselves unionized. Because at the end of the day, management is management. No matter how lofty the mission statement of an organization may be, managers and bosses like to act like managers and bosses.
Yeah.
So in this case, there is a union called the National Staff Organization, NSO, and I'm a proud that I served as a delegate to NSO. I'm proud to have served on my bargaining team and executive board through our state local. NSO represents employees of the NEA and all of its affiliates across the country because there are NEA affiliates in every state. So NSO has a local in D.C. specifically for NEA headquarters employees called NESO, N-E-A-S-O. And I encourage you to check out their website, neaso.org/strike. It's very unusual that you hear about these, intra-union labor battles, but that's honestly a testament to how dicey things have gotten as of late. So the NEA is bargaining a contract with their staff union, and things have gotten ugly enough to where the NESO, the staff union, has actually put out more than one press release. They have established this strike website I just mentioned. They have a whole organizing campaign, a public campaign. They are collecting testimonies from their members. They are gathering support from not just employees of other state affiliates, but also rank and file educators who are members of NEA. And the reason they've done that is because, unfortunately, NEA is trying to really... they're trying to screw their employees. Let's just be real about it. They are proposing stagnant pay. They're proposing cuts to their health care, cuts to their retirement, and really are behaving like the worst kind of superintendent or school board when they're talking about their own employees. And like I mentioned, these are the people who, do the day-to-day work in terms of updating the website, making sure that a membership form is actually processed and that dues are being paid. Those are the staffers who conduct professional training for union leaders and educators across the country. Yeah, and like Jacob said, some of these are good brothers and sisters of mine that I've had the pleasure to get to know, these are really good-hearted people. They are there because they believe in the power of the labor movement. They believe in the power of public education and where those two intersect and how vital that is to our community. So it's pretty infuriating to see that my sisters and brothers up there are being treated this way. I'm so proud of them for organizing because, like I said, it is very unusual that these spats get out into the public.
Right.
And that's by design. Obviously, it is not a good look to be a labor union who has its own labor union troubles internally. And most of the time, the staff unions kind of concede to that. Most of the locals of NSO are not eager to go out and organize publicly for fear of, honestly, making their day-to-day jobs harder in the long run. Right? We're in a very anti-union environment. Teachers' unions in particular are an easy target. And so, nobody who works for them, is intentionally trying to paint their employers in a bad light. But at the same time, workers are workers. And if you're selling your labor for a wage, you are a worker, even if it is to a labor union itself. And in many cases, certainly in my case, and with these sisters and brothers I know on the bargaining team, these folks are dealing with the same kind of BS that the educators deal with that they're representing. So that's where it's an extra slap in the face is that you're grinding, from 7:30 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening, taking calls and representing members who are dealing with jerk supervisors, who are dealing with threats to their benefits and to their pay, just crappy management practices, lack of communication. Those are all things that, as an NEA staffer, you're assisting educators with. And then to deal with the same tactics from your employer, who ought to know better, who is literally paying you to fight those practices on the outside, that's where it's an insult. So like I mentioned, stagnant wages, benefit cuts, they're actually trying to slash their retirement while increasing their healthcare costs. And, keep in mind that D.C. area in particular, it's skyrocketing cost of living. It's very difficult to find housing. Many of these employees of NEA travel all over the country. Many of these NESO sisters and brothers are lucky to spend, a solid week or two at home before they're right back out on the road training folks in Montgomery and Jackson and Nashville. That's their life. And so to see NEA conduct themselves this way, unfortunately, one of the members actually put it very well that this is Stacy Grissom. She's worked for NEA for 15 years. And I'm going to quote her when she says, "Normally, I'm unapologetically proud of where I work and of what we do. But these days, it feels like respect for union values is one-sided. It's disappointing. NEA can't talk the talk to others if it's not walking the walk with its own." And I think that sums it up. I certainly dealt with similar issues myself, in state affiliates. And you mentioned something earlier. There is kind of an identity crisis within the National Education Association because there is this contradiction between being the largest labor union in the country versus being a quote-unquote professional organization.
Right.
And that really has its roots from the very, very beginning when NEA and the various state associations got their roots in superintendent groupings and administrator groupings. The Alabama Education Association was founded in 1856, but it was a superintendent's organization. So those contradictions have kind of carried forward all the way until 2021, and we still see that being an issue inside of the NEA universe. And we have, particularly at the state level, several state affiliates who actually do not want to be called a union. They do not they don't accept that they are unions. They don't want to see that label applied to them, nor do they want to, act like a union. They don't see themselves connected to the labor movement at large. That's the case here in this state, but it's seen elsewhere, and that's actually come into play at sometimes. Many of you may remember the strike wave of 2018, the teacher strike wave. Some people called it Red State Revolt. I know Eric Blanc put a book out with that title because it did happen in West Virginia, Arizona, Oklahoma. And, particularly in Oklahoma's case, you saw that contradiction play out in the real life struggle. You had rank and file educators who were walking out, who were shutting down the school districts, occupying the state capitol. But at the same time, you had folks in the state affiliate management and elected leadership who were a little bit more conservative than that. And I don't mean conservative necessarily in the political sense, but conservative in terms of behavior.
Right.
The two go hand in hand often, but that's certainly the case. So you have this identity crisis within NEA, and I'm proud to see that their staff are trying to fight back, and we're hoping they get a fair contract. You don't have to go on strike. The 98% have authorized the strike, so that tells us they're ready for anything that may be.
Yep. Folks, you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. Make sure you stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
WVNN.
Charge for the land. A population burned up, bled dry. The marginalized multiply and unite to fight.
All power to the workers. Good morning. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. This is the Valley Labor Report. We've been talking about the National Education Association's staff issues that they've got. So again, just to recap for folks that just might be tuning in, the National Staff Organization represents staffers for many unions, and in this case, relevantly, the National Education Association in Washington, D.C. And they're not. They are forcing their staff to go through exactly the same thing that their teachers go through on a day-to-day basis. And it's just they are not upholding with their own employees union values. If you're going to employ people, then you have to you have to pay them well, and especially as it's even, they don't even have the excuse like, oh, we're just like a ragtag kind of group of folks. We're a small, like a small business would say, we're a small business. We don't have the funds, or even like maybe just a local union. We don't have the funds to pay people enough. And for one thing, if you're going to have staff, you should pay them well, but they don't have that excuse even. They are, again, the largest union in the country. The largest union in the country. They have the funds to pay people. And it's so important to have good staff, because the day-to-day operations of a union, especially the largest union in the country, there has to be administrative work done. And that administrative work is so important. And this is something that I've seen firsthand over the last few years as I have occupied elected secretary positions for smaller union federations and for local unions. I have occupied the position of secretary and treasurer over the past few years. And that, it's a small enough organization that we don't actually have to pay somebody to do that. But the work that I have to do there is similar, and I don't get paid for it. And it's like, that's hard work, and I don't like it.
Right.
It's not fun having to fill out all these government forms that businesses don't have to fill out, that, the government looking over our back. Every single penny that we spend, we've got to account for. And it's, we've got to have people to do that. And that doesn't mean that we cede rank and file democracy and transparency and these other union values to an opaque bureaucracy. But you have to have, quote, bureaucrats. You have to have administrators. And but because good administration, a transparent and democratic bureaucracy helps rank and file action. It helps empower people in the rank and file. And so these are not,
Right.
these don't have to be conflicting things, the bureaucracy and democracy and transparency. They can work
should
together.
support each other.
They
Yeah.
can, and they ought to support each other. And one of the best ways to do that is to ensure that the people that work there are taken care of. And another thing that you said when you started this is that these types of fights do not normally get out into the public. And that's because neither party wants it out in the public.
Right.
Of course, a boss is a boss is a boss. The National Education Association's management do not want it out there that they are being a bad boss, because it looks bad on them, just like from the shame and the public guilt and all that. Like, they just don't want that out there. But also, their staff doesn't want it out there.
Right.
Like, their staff, they've been dealing with this for who knows how long, years.
The contract expired at the end of May.
Yeah.
So they've been working without a contract already almost all of June.
Right. And so, this isn't something that they relish having to do, because they are union people. They are movement people. They don't want to have to come out and publicly attack their management, because their management are also supposed to be union people.
Right.
And so, this is not, within the House of Labor, when there are conflicts, we want to, if at all possible, handle it internally, because that's the best way. But the NEA management is not allowing this dispute to be handled internally. And so, like Adam said, they have the National Staff Organization that represents NEA, the NEASO, they've authorized a strike. 98% of the people that voted.
That's huge.
That's huge. 98% of the people that voted voted to have a strike. That's a lot of people. That is a lot of unhappy staffers in D.C.
Yeah, I think it speaks to probably larger issues in the workplace culture there. And maybe at some point we'll actually get a chance to speak with some folks from NSO who could fill us in, because I don't think to have 98% authorize a strike already indicates that this, like you said, it built up over time. It probably goes beyond just this particular contract fight, honestly.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things you touched on there that I think are important. For one thing, not just in labor unions, but kind of in the nonprofit industrial complex, so to speak,
Which is really the realm that NEA would prefer to operate in.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think they oftentimes would feel more comfortable in that realm, hanging out with the nonprofits than the other trade unions. But, in both sets of institutions, you still have people who sell their labor. You still have managers who have the power to hire and fire and discipline. And so you have the ordinary kind of concerns that come up in any workplace. Sometimes you have harassment. Sometimes you have grievances that need to be filed because there's violations of contract issues. Those things happen. And sometimes some of these supposedly woke, progressive employers, these nonprofits, and in this case a trade union, sometimes despite their lofty rhetoric, behind closed doors, they treat their employees like crap. And I have known and heard from many people who've worked in these kind of industries who have horror stories.
Yeah.
The turnover rate for staffers of, NEA is very high. And the same goes for many nonprofits because they are treated the same way private bosses treat their employees. The difference being that they spend their day job as the employees fighting against this, right? So, I mean, how frustrating is it that you're spending your day all day fighting for workers' rights, fighting for fair pay and benefits, only to get called in by your boss and treated the exact same way? And you're dealing with folks who are just like the superintendents and HR directors and school board members that you spend all day fighting against. So it is pretty absurd, but that is something that is a real thing. Alienation is a pretty common trend among these sorts of employment because 99% of the time, folks go into working for a union or even most nonprofits in terms of rank and file employees. They go into it out of a sense of mission, right? They believe in the cause. They want to make a difference. And so that's why they sign up to do these jobs.
Right, and that's why they sign up to do these jobs, and management, and sometimes even people outside of the organization on the left, quote unquote. There was an article in Jacobin about this yesterday, I believe it was. They use the fact that they are going into this for a mission to cudgel workers into complacency and oh, you are going to hurt the mission if we pay you fairly. You don't deserve compensation for your labor. The compensation for your labor is the warm fuzzies in your stomach that you get from helping workers, from advancing the left movement in the United States. And, guess what, folks? Warm fuzzies don't pay the rent. Warm fuzzies don't pay the rent. I gotta have a check in my bank account every few weeks. I gotta have health care to pay the hospital bills. I gotta have something to pay my college loans. Warm fuzzies ain't gonna do that. Folks, we'll be right back.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. President Biden's goal of having 70% of adults with at least one coronavirus vaccine dose by July 4th is on pace to fall short. That has concerned health officials with the new Delta variant of the virus becoming more prevalent. It's more contagious and shown to be more severe. The president was asked Friday if it could lead to more lockdowns.
I don't think so because so many people have already been vaccinated. But with the Delta variant can cause more people to die in areas where people have not been vaccinated.
And hospitalization numbers are increasing again in some states, including Missouri, where ABC's Trevor Ault spoke with the CEO of Cox Health.
Any place with vaccine rates probably below 70 or 80% are going to see this variant take over.
Steve Edwards says Missouri hospitals have seen COVID admissions skyrocket. The state is one of 5 whose 7-day case average climbed 37% or more over the past 2 weeks, and all 5 have vaccination rates below the national average.
Today is the first Juneteenth that's being commemorated as a federal holiday. It marks the day in 1865 when slaves in Galveston, Texas learned of their emancipation. 94-year-old Texan Opal Lee was part of the push to make this day a holiday.
Juneteenth's not a black thing, and it's not a Texas thing. That people all over, I don't care what nationality, we all bleed red blood.
Tropical storm Claudette bringing heavy rain to the Gulf Coast. Falling in Biloxi, Mississippi, tornado warnings issued from the coast in Mississippi to the western Florida panhandle. Hardliner Ibrahim Raisi will be the next president of Iran. ABC's Martha Raddatz is in Tehran.
Raisi is considered an ultra-conservative. There will be changes here in Iran. The U.S. has actually sanctioned Raisi for human rights abuses.
He does support the Iran nuclear deal. You're listening to ABC News.
It's all about the nose. It's your air filter, the first line of defense against bacteria and viruses. If too many germs get stuck in your nose, guess what? You get sick. That's why it's so important to keep your nose clean, just like washing your hands. Nasal irrigation gets rid of germs by rinsing the nasal cavity, but neti pots are hard to use and, frankly, kind of gross. Now there's a better way to keep your nose clean and help your body protect itself. It's called Navage Nasal Care. Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. Millions use Navage for fast, all-natural relief from sinus congestion and allergies, and to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier without drugs. Navage is easy to use, affordable, and comes with an absolute guarantee of satisfaction. You wash your hands and brush your teeth every day. Now it's time to start cleaning your nose with Navage. At Navage.com, CVS, Walgreens, Bed Bath, Target, and Rite Aid. Navage. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Get ready for a big change coming to WVNN. Stay tuned.
Lowly dead, stuck, bleeding pig. Lowly did shot, shoes today.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. Good morning. This is the Valley Labor Report. We are back talking about the National Education Association's dispute with their National Staff Organization members.
Sure. I think we should kind of tie this up because it's going to actually perfectly segue into the next labor dispute we're going to discuss. But something that I read yesterday from some of the leaders of NSO is that NEA has actually been making threats to cut off their health care and cut off their payroll deduction of their staff union, arguing that, well, the contract's expired, so, you know, maybe we just don't continue those anymore. That's completely asinine, and it's just it's disgusting, really, to see that kind of behavior from who are supposed to be the leaders, quote unquote, of the labor movement.
Right.
And I wanted to share something from a good brother of mine, Andy Jewell. Andy is a very kind and conscientious staffer. He has done training here in Alabama and all over the country. And one of his quotes here from this struggle is that the closest thing that I've seen to NEA's behavior in this round of bargaining is when the Tea Party started taking over school boards and tried, sometimes successfully, to break the union. So I think that says it all right there. We want to send our solidarity to our National Staff Organization brothers and sisters in D.C., obviously a cause near and dear to my heart. So to any NSO members, we have your back. If there's anything we can do to support you in your struggle, please let us know. And there was something you touched on earlier about, you know, people who were driven to this work to do the right thing. And, you know, for the warm fuzzies that management loves to give in lieu of, you know, proper treatment, pay, and benefits. And I think that's something that we see in any profession that is care-based, right? Especially predominantly female professions. Nursing, teaching, media jobs. People go into these things to make a difference, to help people, and that is used as leverage against you as a worker. They want to separate your identity as a healer or as an educator versus your identity as a worker. And we see it time and time and time again. When nurses are on strike or teachers are on strike, you see the administrators, the mayors and bosses and politicians say, well, look at what they're doing to the children.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the children. Look at what they're doing to the patients. How dare they? They truly must not care. How could they do that? And I think that's the sort of leverage that is used against employees in the nonprofit sectors and these other sectors. And it's something that is disgusting because we know that workers' issues on those jobs translate into the care and quality of patients, of students, and the clients of these nonprofits. So it's something that is leveraged, and I think it's something that's being leveraged right now in the next fight we had to talk about. Is that right?
That's exactly right. The next fight, and I mean, it transitions so well because this is the kind of thing that in this next fight that they're using is the warm fuzzies, is the prestige. This is something that the New Yorker said in their fight against their staff union after 2.5 years of contract negotiation. But the thing that we wanted to talk about today was the staff for the editorial staff for MSNBC is unionizing. And now here's one thing that I hope is that maybe if they get a union that their programming will be more watchable.
Yeah, hopefully these staff will be unionized and their channel will suck a whole lot less.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed because that stuff is toxic.
Yes, we're crossing our fingers, but look, even if they're still made to make toxic stuff for their bosses, because of course it's still the people who are going to be ultimately controlling the agenda is going to be the bosses and the corporations, and this is what we see in this fight against the union. These workers are trying to create a better life for themselves at MSNBC as workers, as people who do the copy editing, as people who make sure that the grammar is right, as people who make sure that the probably against the wishes of some of the on-air personalities, try to make sure that they have their facts straight, who want to make a difference. They want to be able to have a good life. They want to be able to afford an apartment in New York or DC or wherever they are. And so they have formed a union. They have requested voluntary recognition after showing that a majority of their staff support the union and support unionizing. They want to be a union, and their staff and their management at MSNBC. This is supposed to be liberal, lefty, socialist news.
God, yeah. I mean,
that was my understanding.
People on this station, they would make it out like MSNBC is Pravda. From the Soviet Union.
That was my understanding, is that MSNBC was supposed to be like, Socialist News Nightly or something. And so you would think that these people in management there, if they are actually socialist or left-wing or liberal, and they care about workers, that when their own workers say that we want to unionize, and when they express a majority Democratic support for this initiative, and in an industry where voluntary recognition is the industry standard, that is the industry standard in media right now. There have been so many unions formed in the media industry, and they have almost all been voluntarily recognized by their management. This is not even like these are just lefty outlets. It's just like regular newsrooms voluntarily recognize their staff unions. This is just I said it over and over and over, but I want people to understand this is the industry standard, is voluntary recognition. When a majority of your employees in the media industry tell you they are a union, then management has, in contemporary America, the industry standard is to recognize that. And MSNBC has refused to do that. They have refused to do just the bare minimum and give their employees respect as adults, as people who are supposed to sift through the news and make decisions. They have refused to accept their that their
workers are adults and know what they're doing and want to unionize. And so they have said, we refuse voluntary recognition. We're going to go through the NLRB election process, which is going to give us time to fill our workers' heads with implicit threats, with lies, with misrepresentations, and exactly like we were talking about before. And a much more explicit example of what we talked about with Paul Prescott a few weeks ago is this woke washing of their mission and what they're doing and their status as a workplace. So what we talked about with Paul Prescott a while back is that corporations will, like Raytheon.
They co-opt the language.
Right. Like Raytheon has, they've got like a rainbow on their logo right now for Pride Month. Like,
I'm sure the children that get bombed by Raytheon feel really great that it's coming from a pride supporting corporation.
I'm sure. And so, that's the guy. And these anti-racism trainings, these implicit bias trainings, which have been proven to not do anything, which have been proven to actually, if anything, increase racial anxiety among the workforce, because because what these anti-racism trainings are is millionaires and billionaires and bosses coming down and telling workers how privileged or not they are. Of course, it is not a democratic, bottom-up conversation about race, about people's places in society, about how we can come together and form a more democratic and integrated and justice-oriented workplace in society. It's none of that. It is the boss coming down and so, of course,
it's a grift, too.
Of course, that's not going to work. But MSNBC has done something so much more disgusting than that. They have done it because that is supposed to kind of cover up before disputes come up. It's supposed to kind of make people think, but it's not an explicit fight against workers what they want. It's not, workers aren't necessarily coming out of the woodwork to oppose this, and it's not something in reaction to workers asking for something else. It's something that management is trying to proactively do to quell fears. What MSNBC has done, get a load of this. In response to workers telling them, we are a union, they have said, we're not going to respect your decision. We're going to make you go through an election process. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to bombard you with. Get a load of this. The MSNBC senior vice president, and this is from a Daily Beast article. You can find it there. MSNBC senior vice president argued to the staff that union dues and fees could discourage low-salaried entry-level employees from joining MSNBC, and also suggested that the fees could discourage non-white candidates from taking jobs at MSNBC.
Wow.
If that isn't the most racist, white savior nonsense, you have black and brown staff at MSNBC telling these white executives, we are a union. And the white executives are coming back down and telling them, oh, no, you don't know what's best for you. You don't know what I know what's best for you. And a union, that's just not very good for minorities. Even though black union workers have 10 times the median wealth of black non-union workers, even though the racial income gap, the racial wage gap in union workplaces is almost non-existent. It is almost non-existent, where in non-union work, the union racial wealth gap is almost non-existent, where in non-union workplaces, it is large. And so, the audacity The audacity of these liberal elite, just terrible ghouls to say this to black and brown workers is crazy. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
Big changes are coming to WVNN. Stay tuned.
This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. We're talking about, we haven't even been able to, we just can't get over it. He said in the break, if aliens came to Earth and we're trying to figure out the politics of MSNBC, it would be like we would just read them that quote, because the politics of MSNBC is like, we want to pretend to be good, progressive, liberal people without actually supporting anything that is going to help poor or minority people. Right. That's exact. And in our chat on YouTube, there's a fellow that said MSNBC is the corporate Democrat Party mouthpiece, emphasis on the corporate. That's exactly right. Another fellow said MSNBC is like old Pravda, propaganda outlet for the establishment, just not state-owned. That's another good point.
Right. Instead of the U.S. government, it's Comcast hosting. Former officials of the U.S. government.
Right. Read Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky. That'll lay it all out there. The good brother from the Iron Workers said the office staff at our union hall are members of OPEIU and get the same benefits as our membership and pension through our international union. Still not enough for the work that they do, but they get the same as their members, which is like what they should get. And another guy said that, did the vice president mention that it would probably get them higher wages and better benefits too? Of course he didn't. Of course the vice president didn't say that. But seriously, the idea that your union dues are going to outweigh the myriad of benefits that you're going to get from having a union is laughable. It is laughable. And you can just look at any study done on union membership. Union members make on average 14 to 20% more just on wages. They have more health care for less money. Union workers are the only people left in the country with pensions. It's just like union workers work less. Union workers on union work sites, there are like 80% fewer fatalities, like 30% fewer serious accidents. I mean, it's just like there are so many just so many things.
And a lot of that comes down to the fact that you have a voice in the workplace. You actually have a means to communicate and resolve issues and disputes. So this idea that a union would discourage a non-white candidate is so, I mean, it's bizarre, really, because if you're a non-white worker who's been discriminated against, who the hell are you going to go to? Well, you're going to go to your union rep. You know, who's going to provide legal assistance to pursue an EEOC claim? It's going to be your union.
Yeah.
Right? Who can guarantee anti-discrimination measures and equity measures in a contract and can hold a company accountable for having equitable practices?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Another.
So it's such BS. I mean, really, that is MSNBC in the nutshell.
Yeah, and another guy in the chat said blacks historically have been great supporters of unions, going back to the founding of the UMWA, the United Mine Workers of America. That's exactly right. And the idiots at MSNBC expect them to buy their load of BS. I mean, just seriously, what condescension is right? I mean, I just, we've got a caller on the line. Den wanted to talk about what his union means to him. Den, what you got for us?
Yeah, it's Dan. D-A-N.
Dan, I'm sorry.
Anyway, I wanted to speak what it means to me. I'm a member of 462 Medicare Association here in Huntsville, and just about ready to retire. In about 2 weeks, I'll be retired. It's been a blessing for me. I've been a union steward for 20 years. I've seen a lot. I've had to represent people that I really didn't want to represent, to be honest with you, because some people do take advantage of all the benefits the union gives them, and they're out there. But you got to overlook that, because the bigger picture is for people that need the union, and that's a benefit for them. But the other thing that 462 does for me, I thought that was pretty cool. I could still be part of my union when I retire, and what they do is there's a form where you could fill out, and it only costs me $15 a year to be in the union, because you're on a fixed income and having a pension, which I get because of the union. It's a economical way to stay involved in the union, and I think that's a great benefit that 462 does for everybody. And actually, all the letter carrier unions here in the nation do the same thing to anybody who retires. Instead of paying X amount of dollars a month, all I got to pay is only $15. And I think that's a blessing, because I'm still being a part of the union. I still feel like I'm a benefit to the union. And it's not hurting the bank account, because, when you're retired, you're on a fixed income.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, unions do so much, and you mentioned that, like, I'm sure there are some people that like they do some things that maybe in some way that they take advantage of their union membership.
Right,
but what happens in
is
unions?
Innocent.
What happens in unions is that everybody gets due process when they're being disciplined, where if you're in a non-union workplace, it's totally at the whim of the boss, and there are people that take advantage of that and get in their boss's favor, and it's just willy-nilly, where in a union workplace, everybody has due process, there's a procedure, and you can't just be disciplined like because your boss didn't have his coffee this morning, I mean, there's like a process there.
Well, there's also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I know you only have so much time on the radio here. The other thing that there is a negative, it's called Customer Connect. I was able to get when I was on a business route, I was able to get a company to switch over from UPS and FedEx, and went with the Postal Service. And we never got any kind of benefit from that as far as monetary, because in a union, everybody needs to be treated the same, which is kind of sad, because I worked real hard for that account, and it'd have been nice if I got a little extra money, and you can't do that. That's one negative part about the union.
Right. Yeah. Well, there would be ways. I mean, you can, this is something that you could potentially bring up in your next contract negotiation, to have performance bonuses or performance-based raises and things like that. Unions have that. It's not, that's not something that can be done.
Judd, listen, in my closing, guys, look at, and you take this for everybody listening. This is a guy that's had a lot of years in the Postal Service. I'm very grateful for the union, because I have a pension. There's so many people that wish they had one. I have one, and that's because of the negotiation for my local and my national contract was able to get me a pension. And you know what? That means so much, everybody, because it pays for your medical plus some money left over in your pocket. And that's not even touching Social Security. I'm going to be able to retire just on my pension right now. Until I max out on my Social Security, I got to wait till at least 66 and 11 months to get maxed out. And I'm going to wait till I max out because with Social Security, people, if you take it early, you're taking a big pay cut because the difference is $1,000 if I take it now versus when I wait when I'm full age. Okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling in, brother. That was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of love for our postal workers. We've talked about the Postal Service being under threat, under attack in this country due to agents of privatization. So thank you, Dan, for sharing that testimony. And I think that's great what y'all do to keep retirees engaged because there's always opportunities to improve our intergenerational, learning and passing the torch. Those retirees who've seen struggles and fights, they know what went wrong, what worked, and can pass that on to the young guns. So I think that's awesome. Thanks for calling, Dan.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I mean, that's just like that kind of testimony there just shows the absurdity of MSNBC. Again, I mean, just...
So do you think, are they trying to say that non-white candidates aren't interested in having a pension and retiring with dignity?
Yeah. I'm sure that black folks they just prefer to not have to like be homeless when they're old. Like that's just, I mean...
There was something that we talked about in the break because this actually does reflect their politics in maybe even a bigger way than when I first looked at it. Because I've thought about that MSNBC never likes to use the phrase working class.
Right.
They don't talk about workers or the working class as a whole. And the few times that you ever see that pop up on that network is they talk about the white working class.
Right,
and they always like show an image of, an older white guy in a pickup truck wearing a MAGA hat. And that's not, representative sample of the working class of America. And so, maybe that's sort of their reflective of their politics. Like, unions. Well, why would anyone who's, not white want a union? I think it's bizarre, but it's also a reflection of this corporate liberalism that they pump out 24/7 on their network to, I don't know how many millions of listeners and viewers they have. Not a lot, but they do a lot of damage, honestly. Cable news is poisonous to our country. And, apparently they're pretty poisonous to the people that work there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just so... really, like, this is the difference between, genuinely, like, worker-centered... And, this is, I don't want people to come away from this conversation, from this discussion, thinking that, like, race isn't an issue, that we don't have to talk about race and we can just focus on class. But, that is not to say to black workers, like, no, your class doesn't matter. It's only your racial status. And, in fact, ignoring class and only focusing on your racial status is going to be good for you. That's not it. I mean, that's just not it. No, I think we're about to come on a break is what I was trying to say. What's the... Okay, gotcha.
Sorry about that.
I mean, no worries. It's really like...
Racial justice is an economic justice issue. The two are tied together, but
Exactly.
MSNBC would have you not believe that.
Yeah. Folks, this is the Valley Labor Report. We're going to be right back bringing you a update on the mine workers strike. Going to talk to you about who gets the bird. 1-866-494-9866 is the number if you want to call.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
Tropical Storm Claudette pounding the Gulf Coast. ABC's Elwin Lopez in the storm zone.
Here in New Orleans, a wall of sandbags lined several businesses. I spoke to a barber here who said that the shop where he works was shuttered for 3 months during the pandemic, and that they didn't want to take any chances with this storm, so they have sandbags and a floorboard lining their business.
The storm impacting Juneteenth celebrations today, the first year the date commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans recognized as a federal holiday. Growing concern about the Delta variant as COVID-19 vaccinations across the country slow down, spreading in parts of the country with low vaccination rates, where hospitalization numbers are increasing again. Iran announcing hardline cleric Ibrahim Raisi has won its presidential election, one in which more than half of the voters stayed away from the polls. He's already sanctioned by the U.S. government over his involvement in 1988 mass executions. Dave Packer, ABC News.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air.
Big changes are coming to WVNN. Stay tuned. WVNN. Depend on it.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. There's just so much happening. And so what we're going to do really quick is there's a fantastic newsletter, Who Gets the Bird, written by Jonah Furman. And so what we did this morning is we pulled everything out of that. And what he does is he just goes over everything happening in the labor movement. New NLRB organizing, outside of the NLRB organizing, wins, losses, strikes, contract negotiations, political stuff, legislation, all that kind of stuff. And so we pulled everything out of that newsletter with his permission. I texted him yesterday, that's happening in the South, because who cares about Yankees? Am I right? Yankees suck. No, I'm kidding. I still care a little bit less, but I still care about my brothers and sisters north of the Mason-Dixon. So what's happening in the South? For new organizing, 125 workers in the youth care centers of Fort Bliss, Texas, are organizing with the Machinists Local 2515. 15 food service workers at Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, are joining Laborers Local 955. There were 3 losses in the South this week. 46 manufacturing workers at the John Deere Regional Distribution Center in Dallas, Texas, voted against the UAW just barely. I hate stuff. I almost wish it was more lopsided because this really hurts. In a 22-23 vote. 22-23. If one person had changed their vote, they would have had a union and a better life. The UFCW Local 1995, they got walloped in an election among 29 meatpacking workers at Keystone Foods in Gadsden, Alabama, which is sad. And this speaks to the importance of the labor movement to talk to each other, because this is yet another election that happened in Alabama that I did not know about until I saw Jonah's newsletter. I had no idea about this. I
hadn't seen this from any other unions in the area. I think between the two of us, we're pretty plugged into the labor movement in Alabama.
I'm Secretary Treasurer of the darn Labor Council in North Alabama. I already know about this. I already have been able to been down. We would have
loved to have supported the effort.
Anyway, they lost 3-25. Yikes. 13 workers at the SSB Manufacturing in Charlotte, North Carolina, voted against joining the Teamsters Local 71, 4-6. There's another close election. And the last loss so we can get off of the heartbreaking stuff, is 5 HVAC workers for contractor QTAB in Kansas. Kansas is in the South. Is Kansas in the South?
No.
Unanimous?
No.
Nah? Okay, screw them.
I mean, we wish they would have voted yes, but
okay.
But we do focus more on the South here.
Yeah.
You know,
outside of the NLRB, and so to help you understand what that means is the NLRB is the National Labor Relations Board is the agency of the federal government that governs labor relations in the private sector federally.
Right.
And so what does that mean? Functionally, that means that people that work for municipalities and for state governments are not under the National Labor Relations Act, which created the National Labor Relations Board. And so teachers, municipal employees, things like that, firefighters, they do not organize or have elections within the National Labor Relations Board system. Each individual state and each individual city sets up regimes for bargaining and contract negotiations and such like individually. So outside of the NLRB, we had an election win through the Florida Public Employment Relations Commission's 1,300 adjuncts at Valencia College voted to join SEIU's Florida Public Services Union after years of organizing in a close 343 to 308 tally.
That's good news, and I'm sure our NYU sisters who were on the show last week, who have been doing a lot of organizing for grad student workers, I'm sure they're happy to hear that. Adjuncts and grad students are doing so much more of the work in colleges than they used to, so it's very, very critical that they organize and unionize.
Yep. Some pulled petitions in Tennessee. The machinists had a union election that they had tried to set up with 87 skilled trades workers at the Nissan plant in Smyrna, and the NLRB ruled that they had to expand their unit from 87 skilled trade workers to all 4,300 workers at the plant, which, I mean, that's crazy.
That's dumb.
That's dumb.
I mean, but it kind of reminds me of what happened to the
Amazon,
in the Bessemer Amazon campaign when they did that.
And that's one of the ways flooding the unit is one of the ways that bosses and management and the government through the NLRB cooperates with management to make it more difficult to organize. Because if you've got a specific set of a specific department in a business that wants to unionize their department, they should be able to without having to organize the whole shop. And sometimes it even works in reverse. There are some times where they divide up the unit. It's whatever, and that's why I say it's not just because, oh, this didn't work out for the union this time, so I don't like it. It's because the rules are not consistent. It's not always that workers have to form a wall-to-wall union or always that they can only form piecemeal department unions. It's whatever the boss wants, basically. The boss gets to decide, which is absurd because unions through the National Labor Relations Act were set up to be worker organizations, democratic, self-organized worker organizations, not organizations, gerrymandered by the boss. And so we can, there are some union drives where the workers want to form a union among 2 or 3 or 4 departments or wall-to-wall across the whole shop, and management says, no, that doesn't make sense. It should only be one department has the union, and another one has another election, and another one has another election, instead of all having one union. And so it's just whatever the boss wants, which is really, really a really sorry state of affairs, which is why we need to pass the PRO Act, because under the PRO Act, that would not be the case. It would be, unions would again be worker, self-organized worker democratic entities that choose their formations instead of bosses being able to gerrymander. But that's
and by the way, if we had that PRO Act, MSNBC's upper management may have been a little bit less eager to spread nonsense to their employees.
Yes, that's exactly right. The 2,900 Volvo workers in Dublin, Virginia remain on strike, with the UAW local 2069 in their on-again, off-again fight with very little movement happening between the company and the union. But a new bargaining date was announced for next week, so maybe we will have an update for you on that. And those workers in Virginia, in the newsletter, it said it's been on again, off again, because they've been, okay, we're going to go on strike for a few weeks, and then we're going to come back to work for a few weeks, and then we're going to go on strike because the management isn't coming to the table in good faith, and they're not giving them what they deserve. And so that's a lot of workers, that's almost 3,000 workers that have been on and off the job.
Yeah, and my understanding is much like in Brookwood at Warrior Met, there was an initial agreement that was put out there that was, very company friendly and was resoundingly rejected by the workers. So,
yeah,
we're sending our love and solidarity to Virginia. Hope you guys can hold the line until you get what you deserve.
Janitors with local 32BJ SEIU in Miami, Florida, went on strike against building maintenance company CBM. Transit workers in Beaumont, Texas, with ATU Local 1031 authorized a strike over the allocation of CARES Act funding as well as safety concerns with outdated buses and equipment. In Asheville, North Carolina, National Nurses United members picketed over safe staffing concerns on the heels of their massive union win last September. The 100 members of the Steelworkers Local 759L who were locked out at Mississippi Polymers in Corinth, Mississippi, reached a new agreement ending the lockout/strike on Monday. 600 workers at Vanderbilt University with Laborers Local 386 are organizing for raises as their one-year pandemic-induced contract extension expires in November. The National Domestic Workers Alliance announced a pilot agreement for a sort of collective bargaining agreement with Handy, a house cleaning gig app in 3 states, Kentucky, Florida, and Indiana. We don't care about the last one. As experimentation with app-based worker labor agreements ramps up, that's something to watch. And, we've been seeing a lot of these, especially like the one of the most recent high-profile ones was the one in New York City, or in New York, which was absolutely a complete capitulation to Uber and Lyft. And the idea that you could have called what that law would have set up worker organizations is laughable.
Yeah, I think we got to be very, very careful as we, go into this new terrain of all this gig-based work, which, by the way, if you're an Alabama worker who does gig work, that your unemployment benefits, of course, were cut off today by Governor Ivey. But I digress. But these gig-based jobs, they're not really careers, but Uber and Lyft and all these other ones, we're going to have to be very mindful that if they're, first of all, they need to organize and they need to unionize, but we need to make sure it's an actual union, a workers union, because I think that's what happened in New York, and that's what we're seeing in other places is, these companies like Uber are smart enough to know that they should probably throw something out there, and so what you could end up with is, what we've always called in the movement the company union, that it may sound like a union on the outside, it may look like one on the outside, it may technically have dues and memberships, but it's not independent of the company, and in fact exists to support the company, and that's the case even in other countries as well.
Yep. And the last update, and we're going to dive more into this on the other side of the break, or we may have a few more minutes before this break is over. But the last one in the South is the UMWA, the United Mine Workers of America strike is still ongoing in Alabama. It is nearing its 90-day mark. I was down there on Tuesday for More Perfect Union, and you can go and see that video on Twitter if you would like to get updates there. And I may be writing a dispatch for a news outlet, and I'll we'll tweet that out if I'm able to do that, because and so that's the end. Thank you so much to Jonah Furman for doing this newsletter and for allowing us to pull it and put it out there on audio and video. Hopefully it's helpful for you. And seriously, folks, go subscribe, because I joke about like not caring about the South, but one of the reasons that we just pulled from the South is because we are Southern focused, right? We're the Valley Labor Report. We're located in Alabama, so we do have like a special interest in what's going on in the South. But if I read the entire newsletter, I mean, it took me 13 minutes just to go through and just to hit one line. Every single one of those situations, we could spend the entire show on if we wanted to. Every single one. We could have interviews with members. We could, I mean, seriously.
It's amazing work.
There's so much happening and so much that we could go into. So just hitting those one lines, I think we're going to do that regularly, I hope, from now on, because I want to, even though we can't delve deep into every story happening in the South, I hope that we can kind of give people a scope of what's happening, because there really is so much worker activity, organized and democratic worker struggles for independence and fair wages and liberation happening just in the South. That's all that was the one-line things that's happening in the South. If I went through the whole newsletter, just going through one line of everything that's happening in the United States would literally take the whole show. I mean, it's such a good, and he does that every single week. It comes out on Thursday or Friday. It is Who Gets the Bird? Who Gets the Bird? On Substack.com. Jonah Furman is the author. You can follow him on Twitter at Jonah Furman, F-U-R-M-A-N. I mean, it's great. It's so like, and so what I was saying was I joke about only caring about the South, and we have a special interest in the South, but I really do care about what's happening everywhere, all over the country and all over the world. And this is his newsletter is a great way to just get a glimpse of what is going on in the labor movement and for workers all across this country.
Yeah,
it's so
appreciate the scale.
Yeah,
and the sheer number of unions and elections and actions that you don't hear in the mainstream media.
Yeah, it's really cool. So thank you so much for Jonah for writing it and for allowing us to use it. We have one more segment. We're going to be diving a bit into the UMWA strike on our last segment. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880.
WVNN.
You call the principal J-Rig, add it up. You call the first, add it up. You call the principal J-Rig, add it up. You call the five. You call yourself a good old boy. You call yourself a good old boy, Billy Spokow. You call the meeting, Brittany Spokow. You call
to the workers.
Billy Spokow.
This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. Here with my co-host Adam Keller.
David's here in spirit, of course.
David is here in spirit, of course. I'm sure he's listening right now, or he will be later. Got a couple messages. The best way, if you want to message us during the show, is you can pull up, even if you're listening on the radio, you can pull up our YouTube. We are on YouTube at the Valley Labor Report, and we stream there. And so there's a chat box. And so if you put a message in the chat box, I can see it.
at the same time. It's like live. It's like you're texting me. It's really cool. Just the technology today.
And we do love the audience participation.
We do.
Y'all.
We do.
You know, sometimes I may hang up on you accidentally when you call the radio station. But if you comment on Facebook or YouTube, I can't delete it.
That's right.
I can't hang up on you. So that's a great way. And I wanted to just get this off my chest before we went off the air today, that I really would love to get feedback from the audience on what are y'all looking for moving forward. I mean, the program's been on for over a year. I think we've done some really great stuff, and what David and Jacob have built has really grown. So what are y'all interested in? More national and international stories, or more local and statewide focused stories? Are you looking for practical topics, like what is a grievance, what is just cause termination, what is an EEOC claim, and how does that work? We'd love your feedback, y'all. Comment, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Let us know what you're looking for, what you're interested in, what you like, what you don't like. And even if you can't chip in a couple bucks a month on Patreon, if you could share our stuff, if you could invite your friends on Facebook to like our page, things like that really do make a big difference, because we're the only union radio show in Alabama. We're the only thing like this, really, in the area for sure, that's trying to get these stories out here. So we love your support, and we definitely want to, get engaged with the community here locally.
Right. And somebody said something in the chat. I'm going to Decatur later this week. What should I do? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry. You should join a union. So, I don't know.
And buy some white sauce.
Buy some white sauce. Yeah. And a big shout out to Jacob and Adam, and previously David, for keeping these issues in the public eye. Thank you. We try to do that. Is there a way to make a one-time contribution to the Valley Labor Report? PayPal.me/The Valley Labor Report. If you go to PayPal.me/The Valley Labor Report, then you can send us a one-time contribution that way. And are we only on the air on Saturdays? Yes, we are only on the air on Saturdays from 9:30 to 11 a.m., but all of our broadcasts are archived on YouTube, and we release clips throughout the week on YouTube as well. So the last thing that we were wanting to talk about here in these last 6 or 7 minutes is the mine workers strike. They're still on strike. Like Jonah said in his newsletter, there are 1,100 mine workers are still on strike. They're going into their 90-day mark of being on strike, and the company is trying to starve them out. Okay, and so what happened in 2015 is that the CEO and the board of directors purposely took the company into bankruptcy. Why did they do that? Because of the way that the bankruptcy laws in this country are structured. They allow companies to get out from under agreements and from under debts, and to restructure their assets, and to allow themselves to have a bigger owner that can better leverage assets. And
no surprise that bankruptcy works different for wealthy corporations versus us regular people.
Exactly. And so, just a reminder, the CEO and the board of directors are the same. They did not take a pay cut. In fact, they're making more now than they ever did. And they think the coal miners, who are the worst compensated union coal miners in the country, are paid too much. And they're not working with them to get them back just what they lost in 2015. And so the reason that they are, one of the reasons that they're able to last so long, the company is, in this strike, is that it is owned, Warrior Met is, by a huge asset management firm. So the only Warrior Met Coal is not the only thing that this asset management firm owns, right? They own lots of other things, and so if Warrior Met
takes a loss, that's not the only thing that they own. So they can leverage their other assets against Warrior Met in order to starve out these workers and try to break their spirits and have them never work there again, or and bring in totally new workers, or even have them come in without a union again. And that's what they want to do ultimately. They want to break the union. They want to not pay their workers fairly. They don't want to have to worry about environmental regulations. They don't want to have to worry about taking care of the river that's right next to the mine that the UMWA members have always taken care of. They don't want to have to worry about safety precautions that the union made sure that they took care of. And I mean, it's just they're trying to starve them out. And so we have got to try to do everything that we can to lift these workers up, to make sure that they are not starved out, because we want them to win. One of the things that we talked about last time that we talked about this is that all of these struggles are connected, because this is not the only coal mine in Alabama. If these people at Warrior Met lose their strike, if they are forced to come back for slave wages, go back in the coal mines with a 20, 30-year history at $15, $16 an hour, which is what they want to do, which is what Warrior Met wants to do, of course, without a union, without those safety protections, without representation. If they are forced to do that, then what's going to happen to the next coal mine when their negotiations come up? What is going to happen when the next coal mine's negotiation comes up? They're going to say, look what they accepted. Look what the folks at Warrior Met accepted. What makes you think you're better than them? Why do you, the other companies are going to be able to leverage the bad contract at Warrior Met against these other coal mines in Alabama. And of course, it doesn't just affect coal mines in Alabama. It affects coal mines all across the South and all across the country. What's going to happen in West Virginia the next time as they don't have any union mines left in West Virginia, but it's going to affect coal mines all across the country, and it's not just going to affect coal mines. It's going to affect the communities. Right. Brookwood is a coal mining community. In the same way that Huntsville is an engineering community, Brookwood is a coal mining community. So what's going to happen if the people who support that town have their income cut in half, have to take another $6 an hour pay cut? You can think about it, because what would happen to Huntsville if all the engineers who are making $80, $90, $100, $160,000 a year, what if we got our pay cut by $6 an hour? What if we got our pay cut by half? What would that do to the service industry in Huntsville? So many jobs depend on engineers in Huntsville. In the same way, so many jobs depend on coal miners being able to spend money in Brookwood. And the alternative to the coal miners in Brookwood having the money is asset management hedge fund ghouls, vultures, swine, pigs in New York City having the money and putting it in their bank account. That's the alternative. And so the best way that you can support them to make sure that, well, there are a few ways. One of the ways to make sure that they don't get starved out is to donate to their support funds. They have a strike pantry fund, which goes to help buy groceries for the folks on strike, and they also have a strike aid fund, which is distributed evenly among the striking workers to help supplement their weekly strike checks. Also, you should call your representatives, call your state reps, your state senators, the governor, the lieutenant governor, because these folks say they care about coal miners. Tell them to prove it. Prove it. Prove you care about the coal miners and do something for them. Folks, this has been the Valley Labor Report, and we will see you next week.
WVNN Athens, WVNN FM Trinity, a Cumulus station. It's 11 o'clock. News starts now.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. The Gulf Coast getting pounded by Tropical Storm Claudette. Heavy rain, wind, flood.